Good morning, everyone. So happy to see you all here on this nice, wonderful Caribbean rainy morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting. This is the 11th hearing of the 11th public inquiry of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises. The purpose of today's meeting is to continue the examination into the efficiency and the effectiveness of the Educational Facilities Company Limited, EFCL, in managing the construction and repair of government and government-assisted schools, and to explore what might be some of the possible solutions to challenges being faced by the company. And I want to state that the role of this committee is firstly to examine the issues which arose based out of EFCL's own written responses to our questions, and secondly, to help EFCL in improving its operations, resulting in a more efficient and effective organization. This meeting, for your information, is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners are invited to participate by sending comments relating to today's engagement with EFCL via email to parl101@ttparliament.org, or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament, or on Twitter @ttparliament. So at this stage, I'd like to welcome the officials of the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Finance and the officials of the Educational Facilities Limited. And I'd like you all to introduce yourselves, begin with the officials of the Ministry of Finance, and then we'll go to Education and we'll go to EFCL. Please introduce yourself. Please put on the mic when you introduce yourself.
Morning, Chairman and members. My name is Lisa Phillips. I'm the Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance Investments Division.
Good morning, Chairman and members. I'm Angela Sinosui-Gervais, Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education.
Good morning, Chairman and everyone. My name is Shubha Jaisir. I'm Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education.
Good morning, Chairman. I am Lester Herbert, the Director of Central Audit Committee, Ministry of Finance, Investments Division.
Good morning, all. My name is Suresh Dan, Business Analyst, Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the Joint Select Committee. My name is Ricardo Vasquez, Chairman of Educational Facilities Company Limited.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the Joint Select Committee. I'm Dennis Cox, Acting General Manager and Chief Financial Officer, Education Facilities Company Limited.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Cedric Neptune, Director of Educational Facilities Management Company Limited.
Good morning, Chairman. I am Clyde Pumel, Director of Education Facilities Limited.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Imamuddin Baksh, Director of Education Facilities Company Limited.
Good morning, Chairman and members. Good morning, Chairman and members. My name is Dean Bergen. I'm a Director at the EFCL Company Limited.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Marvin Gonzalez, Director of the Educational Facilities Company Limited.
Thank you very much. I will have a comment after, but let me start by introducing the members of this committee so that you're fully engaged with the members of the committee. I would like the members of this committee to introduce themselves, beginning at my extreme right with
Brigadier General Ansel Antwine, Member of Parliament for Dabadi Umira, Member.
Onen Fazal Karim, Member.
Lester Henry, Member.
Alison Bash, Member.
Good morning, Wade Mark, Member.
And good morning, my name is David Small. I'm the chairman of this committee. And again, I'd like to warmly welcome everyone here. And I want to say a special good morning to Mrs. Sinosui-Gervais, because at the last meeting there was a misalignment. There seems to be better alignment today. So the committee is pleased with the fact that we seem to have a better alignment today. However, there's just one issue I want to delve into before we get into the meat of the matter. At the last hearing, the management was represented by only one person, the general manager. And when the committee received the communication from EFCL, recognized that only one member of management again was supposed to appear. And in that respect, the committee communicated with the general manager seeking to have another member of the team appear, and that person was the corporate secretary. We were subsequently advised that the corporate secretary has resigned from her position. However, because the person is still within the EFCL system, but on vacation, we specifically wrote to that person, hand-delivered it, to try to get that person to appear, because we believe there's some issues with what has been happening in the company that the corporate secretary may be key to. But it seems that the corporate secretary, or the former corporate secretary, now senior legal officer, so that I would like to ask firstly for Mr. Cox, the general manager, to help the committee understand what has transpired, because we made a specific request to have the corporate secretary, now senior legal officer, but still on the payroll of EFCL, to attend this hearing, because we believe it's key, because from our understanding, the board is new, fairly, only a few months at best, so that someone with some institutional history and memory would be able to guide this committee better. Mr. Cox, could you provide any update or help us to understand what has happened today?
Yes, Chairman. We made several attempts upon receiving your communication to contact the former corporate secretary, current senior legal officer, by telephone, by email, and also we delivered a letter by hand to her home. And also, yes, last afternoon, we delivered a letter on behalf of the Joint Select Committee, which was addressed directly to her, and we received no response up to this moment.
So what you're saying is that as far as you're aware, the officer should have been aware of the fact that she was invited to appear before this committee,
yes,
by various media.
Yes, Chairman.
And is this officer in possession of a EFCL issued telephone?
Yes, Chairman. As a matter of fact, the number, when I called her, we got no response.
So that the person is currently in possession of an EFCL phone, is not answering your calls, the general manager, is not responding to emails. Hand-delivered letters were delivered, and for some reason, magically can't appear today. This committee continues to be concerned, and it's no reflection on you, Mr. Cox. We know we've been solely on and actually doing human service and trying to bring some shape to the way in which EFCL has been working. But again, it seems that the committee, someone is scared of us. We're all good, lovely people. Mrs. Sinesri Jove is smiling with me. We're all good, wonderful people, and we would just like to get some traction with what has been happening with the company. But if someone is in possession, is on the payroll of the company, is in possession of a company-issued phone, is not answering calls, is not responding to emails, I would expect that the board would be taking the necessary action, because that is untenable. This committee believes that that is untenable. So we look forward to hearing what action the board will be taking. I see Mr. Vasquez shaking his head. So, because there's no way that this parliament could have one of its personal deliver a letter to your home by hand. So we've used every available media other than going on TV and inviting you to attend. And for some reason you can't attend or don't want to. So I'm not an attorney, but attorneys talk about something called adverse inferences. But I won't go down that road. So Mr. Cox, thank you for helping me with that. And I want to thank you also, Mr. Cox. I received yesterday, through the wonderful service of the Parliament, a thin document here with your submissions. And we would like to thank you, because we want to recognize Mr. Vasquez and Mr. Cox that this required some effort, and it dealt completely with all of the questions raised by the committee. We did receive an additional document this morning, and we understand, and the committee has no problem with that. We appreciate the effort to be responsive. And I want to put that on the record, that the company has been responsive to all of our requests for information, and you've been voluminous in your responses, not only just in terms of the amount of pages, but in the actual level of detail. So I want to put that on the public record, so that perhaps Mr. Vasquez has already started have an effect on the company, and we hope that effect continues going forward. So, just for the members of the committee to be clear.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Cox, we know you're a patriot, and we know you have the good intentions of the people of Trinidad and Tobago at heart. And this committee will continue to protect you because you've taken up a course of action that perhaps is a course of action that most people would not have done. Okay, and we recognize that required a particular brand of patriotism to be able to see something going wrong, and rather than sit by and allow it to happen, you put pen to paper and said, hey, something is going wrong here. Most people, or probably 9/10 of persons, would have just sat by and seen things going in a particular direction and not done anything. So the committee recognizes the contribution you made to that. So we understand. So I just want to be clear. I want to address now Mr. Vasquez. Could you help us with and public, perhaps you'll be able to the best to guide us with I know some of the members of the board who are here have only been recently appointed, so the ink is relatively wet in their appointments. But in terms of how long have you been at EFCL? I know Mr. Purmel indicated he was here since February at the last session. I just wanted to be clear as to your tenure. How long have you been at EFCL?
Through the Chair, on the 16th of February, 2017.
Or the same time as Mr. Purmel. I just wanted that for the record.
Correct.
So that you and so all of the other members of the board have been appointed this year.
That's right. Only the additional 3 members was basically on the 15th of June 2017. They were given their instruments and attended a board meeting.
That's very good. So we have a brand new board with virtually or limited history in the events that have transpired that have led to this inquiry. But that's fine because the committee has a particular strategy that is going to employ to at least help you, Mr. Vasquez, and your new board about some of the things that have not been done properly that we'd like to see not repeated going forward. So and I want to look for your support. The committee is here to help you. Some things have gone that we're going to flag in this meeting have gone particularly awry, and we would like to make sure that we are here to support you in making sure those things don't happen again. But here's what. In order to fix problems, we have to understand what the problem was. And in this case, we need to put it on the public record because I think it's important for the public to understand what has been going wrong at EFCL. And based on this documentation, see all the nice purple tabs I have here, there's lots of stuff that has been going wrong. And where, in this case, several recommendations have been made to fix some of those problems. From the time the recommendations have been made to now, someone has been able to tell me, well, what has happened? The only person here will be Mr. Cox. Senior, the wonderful CorpSec senior legal officer, has found other things to do this morning. So I would like to open the floor. I think MP Karim had requested to speak. MP Karim, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me just thank the EFCL for submitting, which I got this morning, and all of us got this morning, Appendix H, Schedule 1 to 7, Summary of Funds Owed to Contractors. When I look at this document, it is divided into ECCE, Primary, Secondary, Special, and the last one is Library, followed by Various. I didn't get a sense from the document, while it indicated sums owed or funds owed to contractors as of the 31st of May 2017, I didn't get a sense as to the age of these debts. In other words, and I suspect you would not be able to tell it to me now, but we would have liked to have a more comprehensive table of these indebtedness so that we could know how long have they been outstanding. Unless you could give us a sense as to how long now have these sums of money been outstanding, subsequent to which I'll ask some other questions on this document.
Through the Chair, Member Karim, I don't have the information at hand. However, I can provide the information in writing to the committee.
Okay. My follow-up question is, in terms of all of these companies that you have here, have you found all of these companies, every one of them, to be bona fides? In other words, sometimes we have experiences where people submit documents of payments or they say that they are a company. have all of them been certified as bona fide companies? Or do you find in here that there are companies that may be phantom companies? Have you identified any such? And my other question, I don't want to convolute too many questions on you at this time, but how many of these companies have you identified here may have interlocking directorates? I'll continue the questions after.
Yes, through the chair, we have engaged PricewaterhouseCoopers to do a validation exercise, and that was with liabilities or outstandings due to contractors and consultants as of December 31st, 2015. Among from the listing here in Appendix H, those are some of the contractors that are, in fact, in the document that were provided by PwC. Okay? In terms of the outcome of that exercise, they haven't indicated to me or to EFCL whether they were, as I would say, I use the term phantom companies, and in terms of the bona fide of their existence. However, I would add that in terms of our processes, we would look at, from the technical, when you make a submission to EFCL, or you do a tender, we'd look at your technical, the technical report will give you details as to your registration number, your VAT number, indicate to EFCL that the company is bona fide.
Okay. Have you had any instances, as I was asking, because we would have been seeing articles in the newspapers where companies here are subsidiary of other companies that have submitted bids and awarded contracts? How many such companies would you have within this document here who are also subsidiaries of other companies? And I asked the question, how many did you find with interlocking directorates?
Through the chair, I cannot answer that question at this point in time, in that we never really focus on looking at the interlocking directorate of companies. What the all focus would be whether they qualify from a technical perspective and whether they qualify meeting the financials.
Okay, how many companies do you have here which are substantive companies and subsidiaries which have been awarded contracts of those companies?
Again, through the chair, I really cannot answer that question because our focus really is not on the group to identify the status of the group of companies. What we do, we try to focus on whether the company is bona fide and is a registered company in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
Have you had instances where a company has submitted a bid, awarded, and another company of that company, the parent company, been awarded a contract?
In my experience, no.
Okay. With respect to these outstanding indebtedness, you indicated you're not in a position to tell us the timeline, how long they have been outstanding, except that some of these would have been outstanding as of 2015. Of these companies here, have you had any litigation from any of the companies, and if so, how many matters of outstanding payment?
Yeah, the answer is yes. We have several litigation, and those are addressed in subsequent appendix under legal matters and lawsuits.
Now, I just want to shift my focus, although it is inside of here. If you can give us an explanation, I'm sure there's one, on Schedule 4, Appendix 2, in terms of $15.4, almost $5 million for special works. What are these special works and how are they awarded?
Appendix 2. Sorry, member. Which schedule are you referring to? Okay, you're saying Schedule 2?
The same here.
Yeah.
I am seeing here Appendix H, Schedule 4.
Schedule 4.
Yeah, special. And under that you have a number of contractors, and the balance due to all of these contractors are $15.463 million. What does special mean for us and for the understanding of the members who are viewing? And how are these special contractors, the works of these contractors, determined as special and awarded?
In our classification, we classified contractors under primary school, ECC, secondary school, libraries, and for want of a classification, we use the term special, because these were what we call works that we couldn't identify at the point in time when we were preparing this document. So we couldn't classify them as such as being primary, secondary, or ECC. I think the question 5 that you submitted, that's the question 5 that asks us for primary, secondary, and ECC.
But some of these companies here, on this special classification, they are also mentioned in both the primary, secondary, and ECC contracts. And so I was asking, what does this, how do you define special? Is it special preferential treatment? Is it that they have been identified? Is it emergency work? What is it? So that we can get a sense as to how you categorize, how you come to determine that $15.5 million awarded to special contractors. What does special contractors mean?
Through the Chair, based on the documentation that we had access to, or we have access to, we weren't able to identify specifically where to place these contractors. But we would note that these same said contractors would be performing jobs across the spectrum, ECC, secondary, primary. In other words, there's a limited pool of contractors that in Trinidad and Tobago that we use, and they'll be featuring almost in any construction activity.
So you're unable to say what work these special contractors for $15.5 million would have done at this stage?
Yeah, at this point in time.
So we're unable to account for this? At this time?
I would say, let me be correct in terms of, the thing is, these are outstanding payments. In other words, they were not paid because we are not satisfied at this point in time that they are bona fide invoices that we should treat with.
Well, that was the question I'd asked before, you remember? I'd asked about the bona fides of even the companies, but you're saying it's the bona fides of the submission for payment.
Submission,
claims.
yeah, that's it.
So all of these contractors here for $15.4 million or 5, these you have found to be suspect? I mean, what is it?
I wouldn't say that we found a suspect. From the validation exercise, the report was submitted to the Office of the Attorney General, and we are waiting a response in terms of, the recommendation or the outcome of the exercise.
Okay, so at this time, I just want to conclude my part on this aspect, that there is no proper, very clear explanation of special contractors for $15.4 million, except to say that some of these, the submission for claims are being questioned. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right, good.
Thank you. Before I lead the floor to Senator Bash, I want to address to the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Ms. Acting Permanent Secretary Phillips. We've been just been advised by the new chairman, Mr. Vasquez, that there are several new members of the board. I know as part of the normal process when boards are installed, the Ministry of Finance runs a seminar to make sure that members of the board understand their role and responsibilities in performing as directors of a company. I would like to understand, what is the plan? Has this occurred with the new directors of EFCL, or what is the schedule, what is the plan? I don't want to believe that we appoint directors and they're just starting the work without any guidance from the Ministry of Finance. Could you help us with that, please?
Well, in their letters of appointment, they are advised to be conversant or become conversant with the Performance Monitoring Manual, as well as the Integrity in Public Life Act.
This document?
Yes. Yes, sir. We held a seminar in January, and we'll be holding another seminar shortly to edify directors in terms of their roles and responsibilities.
So as we speak now, the members have been appointed, and you've written to them, indicating to them that they should become familiar with this document.
Yes.
And familiarize themselves with the Integrity Commission requirements. But the ministry has not as yet arranged special or any real in-depth understanding of what the rules are there. Because, and here's why that's a concern for this committee. The concern for this committee is the history of what has happened with the EFCL. And we're not saying that the people before us are bad people. When I say they have a blank page, they are good people. But the history of EFCL has shown, based on the revelations of the last hearing, that directors have gone a bit askew in their responsibilities without understanding what their roles are. So I would think that now, we have a new director, and this company is very much under focus, that this something the ministry would look to address quickly. And I know you may not be in charge of putting that in place, but I am sharing this with you, that the committee continues to be concerned. It is something that we would expect, that the ministry is aware of what is happening. The ministry had to take action to replace several members of the board, and it would take the necessary action to make sure the new board members of the board, as soon as possible, are aware of what exactly their roles and their responsibilities are as directors of the company. So I'm not going to press you, Ms. Phillips, but at least I understand from you what you've just put to us is that another session is scheduled for some time before the end of this year. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And I hope that the new members of the board will avail themselves and not go missing like some other persons. Just give me a second. Thank you, Madam Permanent Secretary. But I want to follow up also with Madam Permanent Secretary, Acting Mrs. Sinasui. I want to thank you. At the last hearing, we requested a letter from you advising us, the members of the board, who would have been invited to the meeting with the Honorable Minister of Education. And we are in receipt of that communication. So we want to thank you for sending that to us. However, the committee has noted in that communication that the current chairman, Mr. Vasquez, did attend that meeting, but for some reason, we had a hearing that morning and Mr. Vasquez wasn't able to attend. So I would like for Mr. Vasquez to help us with what transpired on that day. There was a hearing scheduled at 10 a.m., and he was not able to attend, but he had a meeting which we've confirmed he attended at 2 p.m. in the minister's office, which is 5 minutes walk virtually from here, give or take, crossing the street light. So at 10 a.m., he couldn't be here, but at 2 p.m., he's across the street. So, Mr. Vasquez, just for the Information Risk Committee, could you help us with what transpired on the last day, in that at 10 a.m. you could not be here, but at 2 p.m. you could be virtually just across the street? Could you help us with that, please?
Mr. Chair, first let me extend my apologies for the wrong information communicated to the JSC on that day. For the record, upon learning that my name was submitted on the JSC witness attendance sheet on the morning of Friday, June the 2nd, I called the corporate sec and informed her that I was unable to attend that meeting. I had already had my name was listed. I was not aware.
She took your call that morning, right? The corporate sec.
That's right.
The same person who couldn't take calls.
That's right.
I'm just checking.
And this is Friday morning, the 2nd. I just
and it was on a Friday too? So she takes calls on Fridays. Good.
Right? So it's Friday morning, I called her, and I told her that I was unable to attend the Monday meeting. I had already arranged, knowing that everybody was in place, meaning that the former chairman was still the chairman, and everything was organized for the attendance. However, I also backed that up with an email sent to her. I called Mr. Dennis Cox and also mentioned to him that I would like my name unlisted on the attendance register. Later that morning, he called me and said, Mr. Vasquez, your name is unlisted and everything is okay. So I said, good. And what he also indicated to me is that they were just waiting for a replacement. And that was communicated to your office, and Mr. Cox was relaying that information to me. And that would have been probably mid-morning on Friday the 2nd. So I was okay with everything. On Monday morning, the CorpSec calls me. I'm way down on the other part of the island and indicate to me that the Joint Select Committee is calling for me to attend the meeting this morning. So I said, how is that possible? Didn't you? And then she will indicate to me she never sent the document to you all stating that I was unable to attend the Monday meeting. And basically, that's what happened on that morning. And I do apologize for the poor communication from the EFCL.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Interesting chain of events. So you essentially asked to be unlisted to attend the meeting. And the reasons for that would have been communicated with the then chairman?
With the corporate
secretary, who's not here again to help us with that. Well, the committee is appreciative of your apology. Your apology is accepted. We are not bad people. We are just here trying to get at the root of where we are. And we hope that there's better communication in the future, and I hope that whoever's the new corporate secretary gets a better working phone. I want to go back now to something raised by MP Karim, and it's a particular concern of mine regarding and I won't call it specific names, but I look at a list of litigation that's before the company. It's very worrying. Madam Permanent Secretaries, both Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Education, the total value of the matters is 550 million. And when I look at some of these matters, so I won't call companies' names because these are legal matters, but I have noted that one entity has 11 matters at the pre-action protocol stage for $70 million. Another entity, which I will not call the name, has 30 claims totaling over $250 million. Amongst, a substantive listing here. 30 claims against the company for $250 million. And just as raised by the former member, you look at the company here, but the companies, there are several companies, but they seem related. One is this company, just the name, then this company, Security Services, then this company, so that they seem to be interrelated. My concern is this is $550 million in claims. I would like to understand what is the plan to treat this. This is the $550 million is not an insignificant amount of money for an entity given the status of EFCL. So, Madam Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance, I hope you're aware of this and that this concerns you in the same way that this concerns the committee. And I would like to get a response from you, followed by a response from the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Education, and then I will take a response from Mr. Cox.
Well, first of all, let me say this is the first I'm seeing of this, although we do have a return of litigation is sent.
I am well aware, Madam Permanent Secretary. And state entities, if they have any litigation matters, there's a regulation within here that they're supposed to inform the Ministry of Finance of all litigation matters. So if you're telling us today that you are now seeing this for the first time, again, this is shocking to us. This shouldn't happen. So $550 million in potential litigation matters is huge. It's huge. It's worrying. Yes, and I'm not saying that I'm not going to try to do any forecasting on what's going to happen, but this is a potential liability for the company. So, Madam Permanent, Mrs. Sinasri-Jove, are you aware of this, the volume of this?
Chairman, no. I can say this is the first time I'm seeing the full details. I was not aware.
Well, this gets more and more interesting because neither the line ministry nor Corporation Sole seems to be aware that EFCL has $550 million of litigation matters at various stages. And Mr. Cox, I don't want to put you on the spot, but this would have, given that we don't have dates of when these matters start, and that's a request of the committee, because we would like to understand when does this relate to, and to what particular school or contract. So while this has been provided, the committee will be requesting some deeper information to understand when this matter began in terms of the legality, and then what particular contract, what school or which ECC it refers to. Mr. Cox, do you have any response on this? This is a particularly worrying piece of information you've shared with this committee.
Yeah, Chairman, from my discussion with my Assistant General Manager Technical and also the Corporate Secretary.
Who's not here?
Who is not here? Yeah, I've been informed. I will take the opportunity to indicate to the committee that the Assistant General Manager Technical, she is ill, she reported ill, and she has submitted a sick leave. And so this is why she isn't here. She has 30 days sick leave. The discussion held with the Assistant General Manager Technical and the CorpSec indicates that a lot of construction projects has been suspended for various reasons, one of which has to do with funding. And under the FIDIC arrangement, the contractors, I would use the term, I hope I took advantage of the situation in that it was an opportunity to generate revenue in the form of claims for downtime under the FIDIC arrangement. So a lot of these litigation matters has to do with claims on the company based on non-payment for work done. And sometimes the non-payment is as a result of, disagreement in terms of the verification or certification work done and other matters. But it is worrying to EFCL and myself in terms of the quantum of claims and the frequency in which we receive these pro-action protocol letters and judgment. There are several judgments that we are sort of keeping be by trying to talk to the contractors and their attorneys.
But this is new information, Mr. Cox. Their judgments have been issued?
Several judgments.
Really? We don't seem to have a copy of that information here. Could you make sure and provide that to us? Yeah, I mean, I understand from your contribution now that you're still trying to negotiate, but we don't have that information here. So judgments have been made adverse to EFCL?
Yes, Chairman, and this is very worrying to
Mr. Cox, I'm drilling into this because the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance, Corporation Soul is unaware of this. Your line minister is, what is the process in EFCL? You have all of these things. Is there not a management meeting regularly? And well, I'm too sorry that your CorpSec couldn't be here, but your Chief Legal Officer, who would be at least trying to manage these legal issues. I suspect you have outside counsel for some of these matters. So several questions arise.
Yeah. Chair, if you allow, if you may allow, in recent time, the appointment of Mr. Vasquez as chair of the Strategic and Operations Committee, several meetings were held, and one of the key areas that the committee focused on the claims, and we are devising a strategy in terms of how we're going to approach, getting rid of the claim or working with the contractors as a way, and their attorneys as a way of saving the country, by extension EFCL and by the country, of these quantum of claims that
Well, the committee will be requesting several bits of information. We want to get all of the additional information regarding the dates of these claims and these particular schools, and then the issue around the judgments that have been issued. Because we need to understand what does this mean for EFCL. And I understand that you have a new board and they're going to try to roll up the season and get at this. But this didn't arise overnight. This would have been been going along for a little while. Definitely. So we'd like to understand also the scale of your legal fees, because it's not one matter here. I mean, it's pages upon pages of matters, so that the company is likely expending quite a bit of money on legal fees. So that's another bit of information the committee will be requesting. It's of deep concern to us, Mr. Chairman. I understand from the submission of Mr. Cox that you are aware of this issue, I'm glad to, I would be glad to hear that you're aware of it, seeing that a lot of other people are not aware of it. But, and this is where I go back to the point I made about the requirement within the manual here, that any litigation matter must be communicated to both the line ministry and the corporation sole. So that and that is something I'm hoping, Mr. Chairman, that as you settle into the position, that when things like this, you prepare the reports as required, so that your line agency and certainly corporation sole are aware of these issues. Mr. Vasquez, you have a comment?
Yes, I'm aware of.
Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that.
We actually are working towards getting, a proper structure in place. It seemed that it was a bit ad hoc, and all I could say is that yes, we are putting things in place.
And I hope part of putting it in place is keeping your line entities, because I get the embarrassment of the line entities being here and this information being provided to the Parliament, and they don't know about it. So I would trust that there's a better alignment in terms of information access between EFCL and its line. Mrs. Sinasui, would you agree with me that better alignment is required?
Yes, sir, but I'm glad for the opportunity. I just want to clarify something, please. Apparently, the ministry was made aware of the figure, but we don't have the details. I just clarified that with my deputy PS, who is responsible for infrastructure. So we may not have the details, but we were aware of a total figure. I personally, I didn't.
Well, we appreciate the clarification, but if you don't have the details, then it's just giving me a blank figure is not much to work with. But at least there's been some level of alignment. We want a deeper level of alignment. Let me just move on quickly to pass the floor on. I have several requests. It seems that the chair has been taking all the questions. I have firstly Senator Bash, Senator Mark, and then MP, so I'm going to go in that order. Senator Bash, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The committee notes on page 34 of your Human Resource Audit Assessment Report, dated the 14th of January 2016. There were 15 next steps which were recommended. I'm seeing 11 of them which are in the immediate time frame, and 4 of which are in the medium term time frame. Can you inform the committee if these have been completed, the 15 steps plan? That's on page 34 of your submission.
To the Chair, you're referring to Appendix C in the document. Yeah. Appendix C. Since my assuming office, I recognize that certain steps have been taken. As a matter of fact, item number 3, step 3, additional HR staff. The company, from what I learned, had 1 member of staff in the HR department, 2 members of staff in the HR department, and had recruited additional member. In terms of the HR policy document, I think that would refer to 4. The HR department has submitted to the board a draft HR policy document, which is yet to be validated or to be sanctioned by the board. I think it needed more comments or more review. Five, this is ongoing. There's always an HR representative on the interview panel for the recruitment of staff. The HR manager sits on the interview panel. The chairman of the HR subcommittee of the board also sits on the interview panel, especially for the recruitment of senior level staff. Conduct of manpower. Now, item 6, I know the HR manager has embarked on the on the manpower audit, and that exercise is still being pursued. As a matter of fact, we were relying on the outcome of the HR needs audit or needs analysis, to look at reconfiguring the level of staffing currently vis-a-vis the financial situation that we now exist under. Revised item 7, step 7. From my understanding, the board had approved an organizational chart, a revised organization structure, and it is which allow for the change from CEO to general manager, and we have 2 assistant general managers. I think those are the critical areas in the revised organization chart. I think what they attempt to do is to make the structure less vertical. Okay.
Chair, through you, Mr. Cox, is it possible to probably provide a copy of the revised organizational structure to the committee?
I would so do.
Thank you.
And I would like to request Mr. Cox, in the same way as you've gone down the list here, could you provide a schedule showing the status of the implementation of these recommendations?
Okay, Chair.
In particular, recommendation 8 is of deep concern because PwC in their findings clearly indicated there were persons holding some senior positions in the company who are not qualified for the position. And PwC recommended, and I quote, board decision action regarding persons not qualified for positions. So that if PwC did a very good piece of work here, and I'm not here to call names, but they identified specific position holders who don't meet the qualifications of the position. And what they recommended that the board take action, because we're trying to, remember the whole ethos of this committee is we're trying to make EFCL efficient and effective. And we would support whatever decision the board takes. But the board has been guided here by a particular recommendation by PwC, which is not an inconsequential entity, who've done the work and said that action is required. You have people holding senior positions who are not qualified. That is not something that should be entertained. What decision the board will make, there will, of course, be a human element to how you manage that. But at least the board has to demonstrate some level of action. So in particular, I want some details in your reporting in terms of your schedule of what action has the board taken to date and or what is the plan going forward. The new chairman will probably be seeing this probably for the first time, but I will not put pressure on the chair, but that is of significant concern because the other issue that PwC raised, and it's in the attachment at the end under whatever it is, it's Appendix H, where salary increases are being done across the board in various positions in a haphazard manner. And all PwC had recommended is that, and I would say, I am looking at this, the numbers in here, the salaries are not an issue. Certainly for me as chairman, but it's the process. The process. We're not concerned about the number. The numbers are actually not, the numbers are fine. But if you're increasing salaries, it can be just picking and choosing positions and increasing the salaries based on, there's no rigor. And we would think that a company that is using state resources, understand that this is taxpayers' dollars. Every citizen knows how they're riding a maxi taxi and paying their taxes, going to their government job or going to their private company job, paying their taxes, would like to believe that people who are in charge of state resources, even if you have a good case for increasing salaries, you do it in a methodical manner, and that allows you to come here today and defend what was done. What we have here is a schedule, and there's no defense. And again, the numbers themselves are fine. In fact, in some of our respectful views, the numbers are low. But that is not the issue. We're dealing with the process by which it seems that haphazardly individual positions are chosen for increases in salary. And I don't even want to press Mr. Sinusi as to whether or not a level of understanding where these things are going, because I suspect the permanent secretary will be probably very much unaware of a lot of these things. So what we'd like to see is going forward, Mr. Cox and Mr. Chairman, that the company, in doing this type of exercise, you apply some rigor to it and put a process that is defensible. All right, that is you can come and go to anyone and say, we've decided to increase salaries of these positions, and here's the rationale. What you've been presented is a schedule and there's no supporting documentation or rationale. And PwC in their audit findings indicated that that is something you needed to do. So we look forward to the Senator Bashir. Any further follow-ups?
No, not a follow-up.
Thank you, Chair.
Go right ahead, Senator Bashir. You have the floor. Forgive me for interrupting.
Okay, at page 21 of your submission, that will be your first submission. All right, you advise that the company has, and I quote, an internal audit unit is established to review the operations of the functional areas of the organization with a view to ascertain whether procedures and best practices are in accordance with established policy. All right. However, at page 4 of your submission, the position of internal auditor is vacant. Can you please explain?
Through the Chair, we had engaged the services of an internal auditor, and after serving for 7 months, she resigned in May. Okay, so that is some.
Okay. Has the position of internal auditor been vacant?
I think she resigned in May. I think it's 7th of May, and we are in the process of advertising the post so that we can have someone recruited at that level.
All right, but are you aware that this is a direct contravention of the guidelines contained in the State Enterprises Monitoring Manual?
Yes, through the Chair.
All right.
My apologies.
Okay, but given that, based on the information provided, there is no other staffing for the internal audit function. What is the company doing to ensure that there are no corrupt practices taking place?
Through the Chair, the intention of the company is to create an internal audit unit rather than to recruit a single internal auditor. So the intention is to create an internal audit unit, staffed with an internal auditor and some supporting staff members.
If the Senator permit me, what the Senator is asking is in the interregnum between now, what are you doing to make sure that while you're recruiting, what is going on now? Because internal auditor makes sure that proper procedures and policies are followed. Your bank reconciliations are done properly. While you're recruiting, I think the Senator is getting what is the company doing in the interregnum to make sure that things are being done properly? Because again, this is a whole big gap in the company's operation here. So am I correct, Senator Bash? I think that is the question what the Senator is driving at.
Chairman, to answer you, we have a subcommittee of the board, the finance committee. Also, we have audit committee, and both committees are functional, and submissions are made to these committees on a monthly basis.
But that is the problem,
so
Mr. Cox, because the board committees can't do operational work. So I hear you, and your response is disappointing. The board committees cannot do this work. The board committees get the work from the internal audit function. So this is part of the reason why the company got into trouble, where board members are into the operations, and that is not supposed to happen. So that PwC in the audit report here was clear. Even when you had one internal auditor, for the amount of transactions that the company is involved in, to have an internal auditor review all of these hundreds of thousands of transactions on an annual basis, one person is not enough. I think PwC recommended at least 3 persons be part of your internal audit unit. And in the meantime, while you're doing that, their recommendation is clear. Outsource the services of our internal auditor and make sure that while you're getting the problem fixed, you make sure that it doesn't get any further beyond you. And I think that is something that the company and the chairman should really look hard at. Because if you have no internal auditor for several months, all sorts of things will slip by. And even if you bring in the best auditor in the world after that, they will not catch everything that has gone wrong. So, Mr. Cox, I forgive me again for barging in Senator Bash, but the senator sits on a critical issue. The interregnum now between when you are trying to recruit, there's levels. You need to have almost immediately an in-place strategy to make sure internal audit is functioning so that they can provide reports to the board audit committee and the board finance committee. That needs to be an urgent priority in our respectful view.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I definitely take your recommendation. We can outsource the function because it's very critical.
But the comment on that issue, or perhaps the head of the, I think the Central Audit Committee is behind you. Anybody have any comment on this issue?
Yes, I endorse the sentiments, Chair, that the internal audit is very critical to assess risk and ensure that policies and procedures are followed according to the policies.
Thank you very much. Senator Bash, you have any further questions? Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Senator Mark. You have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin by asking Mr. Herbert. I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman, but let me begin by asking Mr. Herbert the following question. But before I pose, let me just give you a little brief background. At our last hearing with this company, either your good self or someone from the Ministry of Finance indicated that an audit, an investigation was launched into the activities of the EFCL. But you also indicated at that time, I believed, that there was only one member of staff in that unit, as I recalled, indicating that the unit is severely understaffed and under-resourced. The question that has to be asked, therefore, are efforts being made to beef up the Central Audit Unit? And if, for instance, that is not taking place, then when can the public expect this report into the operations, this investigation into the operation of the EFCL to be completed and submitted and maybe ultimately tabled in the Parliament? Can Mr. Herbert help or the Acting Permanent Secretary later?
In response to your first question, the Central Audit, there has been a decision made to actually increase the staff of the Central Audit by putting in place a Deputy Director of Central Audit and also recruiting 6 additional members so that the complement of staff should be actually 12 members. That recruitment process is currently going on. I cannot pinpoint an exact time when the additional members of staff would come on board, but we are hoping that that would be sooner rather than later. In relation to the audit that is being currently carried out, the person has started the audit, and we're expecting that the field work would be approximately 1 month. Now, in saying that it would take a month to do the audit, it's on the basis that the person has gotten the information readily. If there are delays in providing the information, there would be delays in the audit. But our estimation that it would take a month to do the field work of the audit and probably another week after the field work to complete the report. The report then goes through the reviewing process to the permanent secretary and to the minister. So probably in a month and a half to 2 months, that report should be finished.
Thank you, Mr. Herbert. Mr. Chairman, may I ask Mr. Cox the following question. The report that was submitted concerning the funds owed to contractors, based on your submission a short while ago, I have estimated that there are roughly over 460 companies involved here. And the value of the outstanding funds or payments could be over $340 million. You have indicated that the Attorney General's office is undergoing some validation exercise to determine the bona fides of these companies. Would you want to share with us whether all my rough estimation of 460 companies that are currently owed over $340 million by the EFCL, could you confirm whether all these companies are under scrutiny by the Office of the Attorney General and therefore cannot be paid as such? Could you verify?
To the Chair, Senator Mark, the answer is not all. Not all the companies.
Would you want to share with us from your assessment and information how many companies are validly owed by the EFCL from what you have submitted? Because I've estimated about 360, about 461, thereabout. How many out of the 460 companies would you say are companies that are properly established and you owe them, but you are still at this time unable to meet those commitments, that is the payments to them, out of the 460?
Okay, Chair, Senator Mark, I would not be able to answer that question because the information, I don't have it at this point in time.
Well, would you be able to supply that in writing to the chairman?
Yes, I'll do that.
May I invite you to join me and look at Appendix E of your very voluminous document, which we welcome. You have, from my estimation here, provided us with a list of what you consider to be small companies, medium-sized companies, and large companies. Small would be about 324, medium would be about 248, and large would be about 53, giving us a grand total of 625 companies or thereabouts. Were these companies recently recruited or qualified or pre-qualified, or are they tied up with those companies that are owed monies? Or are these fresh, new companies from, let's say, in existence for the last 20, 23 months? Could you advise?
Yeah, Chair, Senator Mark, these are what I can consider new, in the sense that this is a pre-qualification list that was done recently. I think it was early 2016.
So it's a new list of pre-qualified companies. So all of these companies have been validly investigated and they are pre-qualified. And therefore, once they submit based on your advertisements, they would be considered, whether it's small, medium, or large?
Yeah, based on our criteria established by
Right.
EFCL, I would say yes.
All right. Could you indicate to us at this stage how many contracts would have been received by each of these entities in the various categories? Or can I ask you, before you answer, if you can go to page 1 under small companies, you have a column or set of, if you look at any of the companies, right? I don't want to call names, but you look at any one of those companies, you have a lot of ticks going across in terms of the areas. What these ticks represent, that they are skilled in these areas, or they have been issued contracts in these areas. I'm not too clear, and maybe you can clarify for us what these ticks represent.
Yeah, Chair, Senator Mark, the document at hand, it shows the company name, it shows the district, educational districts, and it tells you the skill set of the company. So the tick really represents the skill set. Yeah.
Could you then provide us, I don't know if you have that information, out of the categories outlined, the small, the medium, and the large, would you be kind enough to provide to the chairman, on behalf of this committee, how many contracts, since these companies have been pre-qualified, would have been issued to them by the EFCL? And that is on the small, on the medium, and on the large, since they were pre-qualified, given the date that you provided us with a short while ago. Could you also provide this committee with the worth or the value of each contract issued to each company under the various categories, small, medium, and large? And could you also provide us with the total value of those contracts as of today's date when you would submit your response in writing, barring whatever you have to add when I'm through? And could you also indicate to us, Mr. Cox, whether there has been any challenges or difficulties in meeting financial obligations and payments to those companies that have enjoyed awards of contracts in the last 20 months thus far? Have you been experiencing the same, or have they been experiencing challenges, or are things running smoothly in terms of meeting their payments, given the work that they would have done? Would you want to give us a brief summary of what I've asked, and then obviously you'll have to supply the chairman with a complete detailed breakdown of what I've asked?
Yeah, Chair, Senator Mark, it is indeed a very awesome task in meeting those requests, but however we can provide it. Because what we are going to do is to look at the number of contracts awarded to the list of contractors from our pre-qualified list and to classify them under small, medium, large. Okay, it can be done, and we would commit to present the document. But of course, it would be a tedious task given the limited number of staff at the EFCL. I wish to ask what time frame you wish through the chair?
The committee will communicate to you in writing, Mr. Cox, and we will give a reasonable time frame. So I don't want you to panic.
Okay.
We understand the challenges of EFCL, and remember, we are here to help.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So that if you scream you need help, that's what we are here for at the end of the day.
Mr. Chairman, I ask my final, this wrong, because I have a series, but I'll pause so that other colleagues can intervene.
Thank you. You asked the challenges. Just briefly, one of the challenges that we're experiencing has to do with funding, release of fund, because the country is under some, adverse financial constraints, and also from the contractor side, we have some challenges in terms of the contractors not delivering as per letter of their contractual arrangement. In a nutshell. Thank you.
Right. Before I give the floor to the Brigadier, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vasquez, I want to draw your attention to the PwC report on the human resources management of the company. That's under Appendix C. And just as we are done, Mr. Chairman, there's a schedule of findings and recommendations. And because some of these findings are particularly startling, PwC has found that the employees of the company who are employees of the company and there was no interviews conducted. They have employees who are on the payroll for which they didn't do any reference checks, so someone could submit a CV and with references, and no one checked to see if the references were real or if they are a good person or they are not so good person. They have persons without qualifications on the payroll. And then they say not enough, they say without. I think that's a significant statement from PwC, persons on the payroll without qualifications. Not enough qualifications. They have a category, but they have persons who are on the payroll without qualifications. Their recommendations here, their findings also include positions that have been created and there's no trail for how the positions were created, no justification that they could find, so that positions are on the structure and PwC in their process could not find, well, how did this position appear? Did someone just write it in and said, call the position this and we want this person in there? So that these require specific action. They've recommended particular actions of the board on some of these issues. Mr. Chairman, I want to draw your attention to this because this should be something to be a part of your active focus. Mr. Cox, in his contribution shortly, a couple of minutes ago, pointed to the challenges he's having because the amount of staff, but I dare say it maybe had to do with the caliber of the staff. Perhaps, given the findings of PwC, where people are in the job who are not qualified. So that it's a combination of the number of persons and then the caliber of the persons. And certainly I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, going forward, you should make sure that when you hire persons and you give them phones, that they learn to answer the phones. That should be part of the process going forward, that they know how to answer phones, because it seems that one of the staff does not answer a phone. Mr. Chairman, and I just want to draw one particular very, very important recommendation. It is at page 33 of the report, the same report. And this has to do again with the internal audit function. And I just found this, so forgive me for going back to it. But PwC is clear. The board should review this arrangement, and I'm quoting, and at least at a minimum, hire one qualified full-time audit manager and 2 support staff at a minimum. That's the barest minimum, and this is based on their understanding of the amount of transactions that EFCL is engaged in. So that this has to be a high priority item for your board. I'm not sure the members of the new board or members of the audit committee are here, but this should be a high priority item. That PwC said at the barest minimum, you should have an internal audit manager and 2 staff. And I suspect that when you look at the volume of work, you may require more than that. But at least you need to have 3 persons to start. So I want to get a status from you on the implementation of the recommendations of PwC here regarding all of these issues, 3 pages of issues regarding the human resource function within the company. They've made clear recommendations, many of them requiring board action, not the board to say, listen, we have persons here who are in senior management positions not qualified. Here's what we propose to do with it. yeah, it requires board action to deal with some of those issues. So I would, Mr. Chairman, I am putting it to you that this is something that the committee expects, that we would like to see a status of where you are, or if, and that status must include what is the plan going forward. We haven't done anything regarding this recommendation, but here's what our current thinking is as to how we're going to treat with it. That is the way in which we'd like to see your responses structured, so that the committee can fully understand what is the plan going forward. We know it's a new board, you're now coming up to speed, but there's a couple of urgent items in here that really you need to address, pretty much right off the bat. So, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to press you. We're okay, but I want to flag it with you, and that is our request. And we would like to have your responses in the way in which I've just framed it. I now would like to give the floor to the retired brigadier. You have the floor.
Good morning. I want to go back to your Appendix H, summary of funds owed to contractors. And we realize that it's in excess of over $500 million. But the question I am is, EFCL is facing suspension and or termination of contract by contractors due to non-payment. And the question, does the suspension or termination of contract result in any additional costs to EFCL due to the breaking of terms of these contracts?
Through the Chair. The answer is yes. Under the FIDIC arrangement, if you didn't comply from the part in terms of meeting the payment at a particular time based on the agreement, you are liable to, the contractor is liable to present a claim. And most time the claim involves interest, penalties, and it could be a considerable amount of sum involved there.
So this money is more than the 628.4 million you all have put here?
Most likely, because the interest accrue on a daily basis, so most likely this figure could be understated.
Okay. How many contractors are in this position, and how many schools will be affected by the situation if the contractors stop the projects?
In terms of number of schools, from my recollection, I think we have 94 schools have been suspended in terms of completion of contract. And in terms of quantum, I can't recall at this point in time, but I can submit that in writing, if you allow.
Certainly, yes. Mr. Chairman, through you, how will this affect future projects? Because as we are coming to a situation where we are going into the holidays, the August holidays, and we expect that repairs should be done to schools so that for the term beginning in September, the students would be able to come to repaired facilities. How would this situation with the contractors affect any future projects that the Ministry of Education would identify in terms of schools for the upcoming term?
Okay, through the Chair. The suspension really treats with the construction activity of the EFCL. However, in terms of the repairs and maintenance program, there is no significant impact in terms of negative impact, because on the repairs and maintenance program is short-term, and more or less those are completed on time.
So you're dealing with the construction of new schools?
The construction of new schools. There's where we have the large amount of claims.
But the contractors who are involved with the construction of new schools, are they some of the same contractors who will be involved in the repairs of the existing schools?
The answer is yes. Some are in fact involved in the repairs and maintenance.
And if you are in conflict with the contractors for the new schools, who are also the contractors for the repairs, when they carry their situation across the board, what guarantee you have that that would not be done?
I think in the pre-qualification exercise, I'm thinking, in the pre-qualification exercise, one of the criteria is to look at contractors who have, initiated legal proceedings against the EFCL. So that is a criteria which, we look at a factor that we may deem the contractor.
But I don't want to put you on spot, but would it mean that you would debar these contractors who have arbitration from getting contracts in terms of new contracts coming up?
We haven't taken a decision as such, but it's something that we are looking at in terms of whether we should, continue to proceed with those contractors who are taking legal action against us. But it's not a definite position at this point in time.
Okay.
Can I just follow up on the, again, I'm going back to the PW. Forgive me, the chairman has been a bad boy. He didn't put on his microphone. I am going back to an issue that I'm following on from the issue raised by Brigadier. PwC recognized here that among the weaknesses, they say here on page 5 of, let me try and get the document. It's so much paper, forgive me. The EFCL procurement function diagnostic, dated 6 April 2017. So this is not a old document. This is a very recent vintage. April 6, 2017 is this report. And PwC indicated that on page 5 of that, there's no records of past performance of contractors. So you're not capturing records of past performance of contractors. And then they also said there's weak monitoring of contractual obligations of contractors. So when PwC is looking at the company, saying, one, there's no record that they could find of the past performance of contractors, and then there's weak monitoring of the obligations of contractors, then contractors could almost come and do anything under EFCL's watch. And that is a fundamental failing, because this is where you have potential for a hemorrhage of state resources, because you're giving persons contracts. You have no record of how they performed in the past, and then you're weak in monitoring what they're doing now. That is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for public funds to go down the chute. So and again, PwC have been very clear about, and they've made a recommendation in there about how to treat it. That. So again, if you have to bear with the chairman here, because this report concerns us deeply. The whole business of EFCL is about getting work done to have the nation's schools, at least the core work, making sure the schools are properly repaired, are properly functional. When you have contractors, and as of April 2017, it's been noted here in the findings that you don't have a record that they could find of the past performance of a contractor. So a contractor can come, have been a horrible contractor before, you just, because the pool is limited, you give them work again. That shouldn't happen. And then B, what's worse, you're not able to monitor properly what they're doing now. So that there needs to be some concerted action. Mr. Cox, you're the lead person, but again, this should attain the attention of the chairman and the members of the board, particularly whichever board committee has an operations focus, about tightening this area of the company's operations, because this is where you have potential for massive hemorrhage of state funds, massive hemorrhage where people are doing work and you give them the contract, they have a scope of works, and if you're not following, then anything could happen. And then they may be making claims that, based on your understanding, may not be correct, but you almost have no leg to stand on. Mr. Cox, can you give us a response, please?
Chair, for clarity, there's in fact a process in terms of, looking at the quality control from an exercise. The completion certificate would attest to us, EFCL, that the work has been completed in accordance with scope. All right, in terms of payment, we would not proceed to pay a contractor if there is no completion certificate, in other words, and those would lead to challenges in the court.
Mr. Cox, I want to stop you. You have to forgive me.
Yeah, sorry.
You see, what you said is what troubles me the most. You've just said that essentially EFCL is relying on the completion certificate. That is what troubles me the most. And this is where management of the projects has gone awry. So I've listened to you, and you have to forgive me. This is, and hear me here, understand the chair. I'm not trying to beat up on the company. I'm trying for us to agree on a process that could fix what is going wrong. The company cannot be taking state funds and be depending on the completion certificate to be sure that the work was done. That is abdicating your responsibility. If you go back to the same PwC report on page 62 of their findings, they said, and I quote, EFCL is responsible for multiple projects which are not appropriately tracked during execution. So that again, it's the same issue. You're not monitoring the projects properly while they've been executed. It is not appropriate or correct or right to be waiting for the completion certificate to say, well, I think everything is fine. There should be a rigorous process, and if you need staff, you need resources, those are things that you can make the necessary recommendations to, and I'm sure your line people are here, both the education and finance are here to help you with this. And I understand some of the projects are small, some are big, but PwC has made a clear finding here, and I'm troubled. I'm troubled by your initial response, and I would like to help, for us to be able to help you, but we have to agree on a road forward. Mr. Cox?
Yeah. Chair, just for clarity.
Speak after.
Sorry. Just for clarity, I didn't give you the entire process. In fact, each project is headed by a project manager in-house, usually an engineer. Also, the team, there's a team consisting of the project.
An engineer is not
headed by the project manager.
Mr. Cox, we keep running. A project management is a peculiar skill. It's a skill set. So if you appoint an engineer to be a project manager, then I would respectfully like to challenge you on that. Okay? The engineer may have project management training, but depending on the size of the project, you may need someone with specialized skills. So I understand what you're saying. What I'm getting is that you're trying to make the best use of your available resources.
Yes.
What I would suggest you say, Mr. Cox, is that perhaps in this area of project management, you need more resources and more specialized resources.
And definitely.
Well, okay. I would be more willing. I'm trying to work with you to help you, because I think the company needs to understand that given with the resources you have, you're trying to apply the resources as best you can. What the committee is suggesting to you, you perhaps need more resources or more specialized resources to be able to pull this back into a way in which you can have confidence about giving a project to a company after they go into the tendering process, and then making sure that the company is held to what it is supposed to do. Mr. Senator Henry would like to jump in.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I have some questions that I hope will be fairly quick in terms of the answers, and I will make a brief statement, because based on what I'm seeing in these documents and what I've been hearing so far this morning, I mean, I don't envy the board at all. You seem to have a very Herculean task, given the numerous difficulties that have been outlined in all of these Pricewaterhouse reports, and as noted by the chairman and other members. But let me just get something basic. Do you generate any revenue at all? Does the EFCL?
Chair, Senator Henry, we generate revenue, project management fees, which is paid by the Ministry of Education, who is the owner of the project.
Oh.
So our mainstream revenue, project management fees.
Project management fees. Okay. So you don't strictly depend on disbursements from the Ministry of Finance?
No, strictly project management fees.
Strictly, and in terms of the funding of the projects, I mean, not just to run your internal operations.
Yeah, the funding of the project comes directly from the Ministry of Education. Some of the funding come from the IDB fund.
IDB?
Yeah, from the IDB.
Okay. And anything else?
IDF, sorry, IDF.
Infrastructure Development Fund. Okay. So, and these are dispersed through the Ministry of Education,
yes.
Upon granting from the Ministry, ultimately from the Ministry of Finance. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And because what I'm trying to get at is that if there are any other reasons for non-payment to contractors, because this seems to be the central problem at the end of the day. If there are any reasons other than just the fact that the country is going through a hard time and we don't have as much money, are there any other factors creating problems for the payment to contractors?
Through the chair, yes, Senator Henry, one of the factor would be the contractor not meeting his end of the bargain. In that, as we said, there might be shoddy work, or there might be issues in terms of the billing, or differences in terms of what the quantity surveyor agreed on, or what the company's internal processes submitted through through an invoice. So the invoice might be saying one thing, and when you look at the quantity surveyors report, it sees a different.
Okay.
So you find that there could be dispute over that, and that will lead to the non-payment to the contractor.
Well, that takes me into the claims against the company, and some of them you said already went into judgment. So this would have been going on for quite some time now.
Yes.
Could you give us some idea, because on the information provided here with the claims, there were no dates in terms of when the pre-action protocols were filed and so on. Could you give us a time frame when this whole mess, as it seems, emerged?
From my recollection, there's a number of claims going back to 2011 to present.
And could you give us the bulk of these would have happened?
Yeah, the bulk of the claims would have been as of December 2015, sorry. That is when we brought in PwC to do the validation exercise.
Okay.
And we're looking at around almost $800 million in claims.
Okay. So, because for these things to reach a judgment, the claim must have been there a long time, because given how our courts usually take a while to get to that state. What about the HR manager situation? Was that resolved? I heard a lot of comments about it, where there was an absence of an HR person for quite some time. Has that been resolved?
Yes, we have a HR manager on board.
I know it was I just probably missed it. Right. But and there's also been a relatively high turnover of staff of all kinds. What is going on in the company that could explain such a high turnover?
Through the chair, it's difficult to explain, but we have a number of resignation at the level of senior management. We have a senior management. Couple of management staff has left for a number of reasons.
Have there been recent resignations since the new board, since the Mr. Vasquez board came in? Are there?
Our last resignation was in May. Yeah, we had a number of resignation in May and a number of non-renewal of contracts.
Oh, okay. And I think I'll pause here for now.
Before I give the floor to MP Karim, I just have a quick follow-up on Senator Henry. And your documentation supplied to us, I think this came out of the question that we asked at the last hearing. You provided a list of terminated employees, and we didn't have the dates, because I'm seeing Chief Executive Officer, Chief Operations Officer, Implementation Manager, Divisional Manager of Finance, Manager Repairs and Maintenance, Procurement Manager, Senior Engineer. This is a list of terminated employees. So that, from the CEO all the way down to Senior Engineer, but they're all relatively senior persons who've been terminated by the company. And so, I don't want you to respond, but could you help us to understand the rational reasoning? And then the dates, yeah? So that we'll accept it in writing. We'll accept it in writing. I don't, because I deliberately have not called the names of the person, I've called the positions. But we'd like to understand the rationale and the dates, because when you look at this list, it's a troubling list from CEO, divisional managers, procurement manager. The lowest person is a senior engineer. So you seem to have a lot of senior people who've been not resigned, but been terminated. So there must have been a reason for what seems to be a mass termination of persons here at very senior levels of the company, and the committee would like to get an understanding of what happened here. Not for the public record, but at least provide it to us in writing. We'd appreciate that. I now give the floor to MP Karim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cox, throughout this morning, you have more or less alluded in many ways to the deficiencies of contractors. Can you tell us whether you have found any instances of fraudulent practices by contractors? And if you have, can you give us a sense as to what that might be? Number of contractors, the quantum of money that is concerned?
To the chair.
Suspected fraudulent.
No, we haven't identified, and EFCL hasn't identified any such incidents.
That one?
No.
Interesting.
Okay. You mentioned as well the lack of submission of completion certificates. Can you tell us how many projects have been challenged? You can't open schools or you can't utilize facilities. How many such instances of non-submission of completion certificates by contractors, and what quantum of monies are we talking about involved?
MB Karim, through the chair, I can't answer this at this point in time, but I can provide a response in writing.
Would you say that it is a sizable amount? There's a concern about the number of projects for which you have not received completion certificates?
If I were to answer broadly, all the contracts that were suspended would be in a situation we talk about 94 contracts that has not reached the stage of, or have not reached the stage of completion. So therefore, there would not be a completion certificates with respect to the 94 suspended construction projects.
So 94 contractors have not submitted completion certificates?
If I were to answer it in the light of suspended or terminated contracts.
What percentage would you say that represents of the total number of contracts? On the average?
It could be around 70, 80%.
So 80% of the projects, the contracted work, have not satisfied the criteria of completion certificates and therefore payment.
Yes, I can safely say that.
You did mention, and in fact your vision statement of EFCL says that you want to be a project manager of choice. Can you tell us whether you outsource project management services, whether there's a list of approved project managers? So first of all, do you outsource? And if you outsource, what quantum of monies do you pay for outsourcing, say for an average of a year? And how does that compare with your revenue stream you receive as a project manager?
Through the chair, I'm not in a position to answer the question at this point in time.
Okay. I just want to ask, and I don't know which one will want to...
I wonder, will you be able to provide that in writing to us?
Yes, Chair. Okay. I will do.
Thank you. That's a very important question raised by MP Karim about the outsourcing of those services. Thank you.
Because that will give you a sense of the sustainability of the organization. I want to go into an area that no one has touched on as yet, and it's one of your mandates, that is textbook rental management unit. Could you tell us, if you can, whether publishers are owed, how much they are owed, whether they're being paid, and in the indebtedness, when will they be paid? The sum, publishers, because you have the indebtedness here in the document we got, but I couldn't extract it because I would not have known it, did not identify. Quite apart from the special contractors, 12 of them, I could not have identified who are the publishers. So if you can tell us whether publishers are owed, how many publishers, and when will they be paid?
In terms of the textbook rental program, I think EFCL has been doing quite well in that area, in that for 2014, 2015, we got an advance sum from the Ministry of Education so that it was easier to contract and to, to satisfy contractors with that respect. 2016, 2017, however, the textbook publishers, they'll be very slow in terms of producing their invoices. So we are sort of, limited in that sense in terms of the rate at which invoices are being presented to us for payment.
In other words, all the invoices that have been submitted to you, they have been paid?
Currently, no.
So what amounts are outstanding? And that's the original question I'd asked. How much do you owe publishers, outstanding amounts? Quite apart from them not submitting their claims. Of the claims that were submitted, What quantum are we talking about, and when will that be paid?
Through the chair, I will have to submit that in writing if you wish.
Okay. Now, we are looking at a couple of weeks, just the vacation period, to the reopening of school, and I know you have an expert on your front desk there with a tremendous amount of experience in teaching and the teaching service. Can you tell us whether there is going to be a top-up of textbooks for the September term?
Can I defer the question to the ministry? Person?
Can I provide that information in writing, sir?
Sure, yes, because it really hinges on the fact whether we will have sufficient time through the textbook evaluation committee, and that's a question I want to ask as well. Is there an active textbook evaluation committee as we speak that is looking at the quality, the content, and as it responds to the curriculum in the primary, secondary schools? Is there an active evaluation committee?
Chairman, yes, there is an active committee recently appointed earlier this year. I believe they submitted an initial report. However, I was on vacation leave, so I haven't seen the report, but I know an initial report was submitted.
Okay. I know you would not have seen it, but I don't know if the Deputy PS could answer whether there are any recommendations for the issuance of new textbook under this unit for the coming September term.
Unfortunately, I am not able to answer that. Textbook is on another side remit. I deal strictly with infrastructure, so I can't say if there is, but we can source the information and provide it.
Okay, so can I say that at this point in time, you are unable to indicate whether there will be a 10 or 15% top-up of textbooks for the commencement of the September term?
I believe there will be a top-up, yes, but I would prefer to provide that information in writing, sir.
Okay. EFCL, Mr. Cox, you indicated that this facility is working well. Can you tell us, because there seems to be some concerns in various schools with the issuance of the textbooks, but more importantly, in terms of the retrieval of the textbooks for future use. Can you tell us whether there is a problem with the retrieval, or what percentage of the issuance of textbooks are received upon the completion of each academic year?
Through the chair. We at EFCL, our focus is procurement of the textbook. We are not involved in the rental process. The rental process is at the level of the Ministry of Education.
So when you are procuring, do you really concern or ask any question to the respect of why are you procuring so many more of the same textbook? Because there seems to be, and I can tell you from investigation, there is a concern about the non-retrieval of these textbooks. And what might very well be happening in a time of scarcity is that you might be continuing to top up, which could have been saving you money if you had a proper retrieval system.
I'm in full agreement.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask another question with respect to, in terms of the textbook rental. Since you are in the procurement of the textbooks for issuance in the schools, are you satisfied with the quality of the textbook that you are procuring?
Through the chair, again, EFCL our mandate is limited to the procurement, and we don't extend ourselves beyond that, unfortunately.
I just wanted to go back to the issue of the audits. Have you had any reports? It may have been in the document you sent us, but have you had any reports with respect to outcomes of the PwC audit, the most recent one?
To the Chair, to date, no report has been received by EFCL on that.
And have you been advised of any such reports from the Ministry of Finance or the Office of the Attorney General?
And in respect to the Ministry of Finance, the audit is in process at present. With respect to the PwC audit report, I'm informed that it has reached the Office of the Attorney General, and we await the response from the Office of the Attorney General.
Thank you, Senator Bash.
Okay. In your response to questions around customer service feedback process, you stated, and I quote, currently no statistical data of complaints are collected by either the EFCL or the Ministry of Education at this time. But it was then stated again that on average, 20 complaints are resolved by the EFCL on a monthly basis. Can you just inform the committee how was the average arrived at?
Yeah, Chair, what we did, we look at the number of claims, the number of complaints we receive through an internet arrangement, and we monitor the person who is managing the query as a query file, and we look at the number of responses based on the number of queries submitted. So out of 100 queries, we'd see probably 20 on average has been dealt with in terms of a feedback given to the, when you say dealt with, a feedback given to the person making the query.
Okay, I just have one more question. You've also indicated that you actually listed 5 subcommittees that were established in order to facilitate the achievement of the mandates of the board. All right. Can you kindly provide to the committee in writing the members of these subcommittees?
Chair, I also do.
Thank you very much. I have a quick question for Permanent Secretary Phillips. In your understanding or your experience, is it normal for the corporate secretary of a state enterprise to have a limit that allows them to procure goods and services? As in part of the submission from EFCL here, they indicated the corporate secretary of the company has the authority to up to $100,000 to procure goods and services. Is this something that's usual or normal?
I've seen it before, but I don't think it's a practice that we would like to encourage.
I am of your view that is not the corporate secretary is supposed to be somebody who's away from the average run-of-the-mill parts of the operations, and I am perturbed, and in particular now the corporate secretary is not here to respond, but it's part of the rules and procedures of the company for regarding their tender. It's part of their tenders rules, and again, I suspect, I'm not sure if this would have been submitted to the ministry for approval or vetting, but it's part of the, and it's very old vintage, 2007. So it's not a recent procedure. But to have the corporate secretary be able to procure goods and services up to $100,000 seems unusual to this committee. And we have no problem with the CEO having a limit, or even divisional managers, but the corporate secretary seems a bit unusual. But if you said you've seen it before, perhaps this committee...
It's something that we can look at. We are revising the performance monitoring manual, and we'd certainly look at that.
Thank you very much, Madam Permanent Secretary. Senator Mark, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cox, in light of the PwC's report, whenever that was finally submitted, we understand there are over 20 claims actively being pursued at the level of the courts. Maybe you can tell us if there are more as we speak. The question here is how much monies are being expended by EFCL in order to deal with these claims thus far? And could you also advise on the number of attorneys and maybe legal firms that have been recruited by the EFCL to address this suite of claims that have been proffered against the EFCL? May I also, would you like to respond or just but supply these things in writing?
I'll supply in writing, definitely.
All right. I also looked at some of the findings of the Price Waterhouse Coopers under payables management. That is on page 45 of your submission. I think that would come under Appendix C, if I'm not mistaken. It is stated here that the Finance Division has at times been instructed to pay contractors without receiving funds from the Ministry of Education, and that these contractors would then be paid from the EFCL's revenue accounts. Now, could you indicate to this committee who would instruct the Finance Division to pay these contractors without receiving funds from the Ministry of Education? Could you clear that for us?
Through the Chair, in terms of use of the revenue fund, there are certain situations that may arise at times or do arise. And for instance, a court judgment and a company is coming to seize the assets of the company. There's a real situation. A decision through the management would be, recommendation of the management would be to the board that one way of treating with that situation is to use our revenue fund to forestall the closure of the company, or the physical closure of the company in terms of the execution of a court judgment. So in such situation, we do in fact, with the recommendation of the management and the approval of the board, we would use the revenue fund to advance a payment pending receipt of the funds from the Ministry of Education.
But would you not say that it would be better to follow the advice of PwC and establish a contingency fund or account rather than going into your general revenues?
I appreciate the recommendation of PwC, and is a practical way of treating with it, and we would look at that.
Would you be effecting that recommendation?
Chair, definitely, Senator Mark, definitely.
May I also ask, Mr. Cox, that maybe the Ministry of Education Permanent Secretary, a number of allegations continue to swirl around this company as it relates to their tendering process. Would you say that, and this is to maybe the Ministry of Education Permanent Secretary and the Ministry of Finance Permanent Secretary, it is alleged that the tendering process at this company has been deliberately manipulated. It is alleged in the issuing of awards of contracts, and that this has been manifested by the changing of the tendering process. Have you been able to conduct any inquiries or investigations in order to verify these claims that the tendering process has been deliberately manipulated by this company to award contracts to their favorites? That is what has been alleged. Have you, and they have changed the tendering process, and I don't know if you're aware of it, and could you tell us whether the ministry as a line ministry and the Ministry of Finance, in the case of the Permanent Secretary, have looked into this matter, having regard to the seriousness of these allegations?
We have not done any preliminary investigations, but what we have done, as the committee is aware, we have sent out the Central Audit Committee to do an in-depth investigation into the procurement practices of the EFCL.
May I ask of the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education as the direct line ministry with responsibility for EFCL, what has the ministry done to deal with this particular perception based on serious allegations, particularly these things that have been published in the newspapers, particularly the Trinidad Express?
Through you, Chair, because the company is wholly owned and under corporation sole, we expected that the Ministry of Finance would deal with the audit, and as we have all been told, the audit has commenced. The Ministry of Education hasn't taken any steps to conduct any audit.
Mr. Chairman, may I also inquire as to, I don't know if Mr. Cox or Mr. Vasquez would be able to deal with this. Could you tell us what was the tendering process, the system of tendering that existed prior to the introduction of the two-envelope system? Could you explain to us what was the system of tendering that you had at the ministry, at the EFCL, or do you still have that system in existence, whatever that is? And you have now introduced, I understand, a two-envelope system. Could you share with us if that is true or that's false? And could you tell us, for instance, what was the previous system you had in existence, and if that system has been changed, or if the two-envelope system has now been added to the system that is in existence, or that was in existence prior to the introduction of the two-envelope system? Anybody can answer.
Okay, through the Chair, I'll attempt to answer the question, Senator Mark. Both the Chairman and I have been what I consider recent entrants into the EFCL family. We are not aware then, but I'm particularly aware of the system, the two-envelope system that is in place right now. However, there are two sets of audits being conducted to sort of quell or to bring to conclusion, to closure, those allegations that are out there in the public domain. So I think we all kind of wait the outcome of those.
If you'd permit me, Mr. Senator Mark, I want to reference a newspaper publication ad put out by the company and the previous weekend, setting a record straight. So I've just listened to the response about there's audits going on to deal with the things that are going on. Why did the company see it necessary to run a full-page ad in two of the three daily newspapers? I know that it only ran in two of the three. I don't want to ask why the third one wasn't included, because I'm sure that as a good corporate citizen and as a state-owned entity, you would apply an even hand. I would expect that you would apply an even hand in the way in which you're spending government funds. If you put in ads in the newspaper, you put in all. But I won't ask you about that. I just want to know what would have driven the board? I suppose the board would approve this. I suppose so I could only surmise, or at least Mr. Cox, the manager. I don't see the company running an ad like this without the board approving. So the only person who could really help us with that is Mr. Vasquez. But you're still quoted here. You're quoted as a member of the board. So this article called Setting the Record Straight. Mr. Cox has told us that the companies understood that there's a series of activities going on to try to deal with all of the things that are in the public. Why did the company still find it necessary to do this? And what is the approval process for this? Mr. Vasquez, could you help us?
Through the Chair. Another thing to set the record straight, I could speak on behalf of myself, Mr. Clyde Pumel, and Mr. Dean Bergen. We were all at that meeting when that particular document was suggested, and we did not consent it.
Really?
We did not consent it. Subsequent, I had asked why did our names go out on a newspaper article when we specifically said we will not consent to anything leaving EFCL without our permission. And yet, we found out, just like yourself, articles were published in the newspapers on behalf of the company. I subsequently launched I subsequently launched investigation, and of course, the CorpSec is not here to answer that also.
How convenient that is.
And I did get a partial report on how it was done, and I can submit that report to your committee.
We would appreciate the report, but what I'm trying to get at, you indicated that the board sat. A draft of this document, I suppose, was presented to the board. Yourself and a couple of members of the board indicated that they're not in agreement. So I'm trying to understand what happened. Is it that the majority of members, other members present, agreed to go?
There was no decision at that point in time. It was supposed to be circulated to us for a consent and approval, and for some reason, how it happened, orders came from the then HR committee together with the CorpSec, which was disseminated to the communications special projects manager, and the ad was published.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Vasquez, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but it can't just be published. There has to be a process, an approval process.
Well, the approval came from the CorpSec. Just to answer that.
So, but if the board didn't agree, under what basis would the CorpSec approve it?
Again,
I'm hearing you, and this is where, I'm not driving directly at you, but it speaks to a complete breakdown. If the board met, something was presented to the board had no agreement. Am I correct?
Correct.
And what you're suggesting is that the CorpSec proceeded with it?
Correct.
But the CorpSec isn't here to defend herself. But somehow or the other, it got into the newspaper. And so that is where the committee, we have concerns on two levels. The process by which this got to the newspaper, and then the fact that your line ministry had initiated a series of audits to try and treat to these issues, yet some bodies, in spite of the board not agreed to proceed with this. So something is completely awry. Mr. Cox, I won't put you on the spot, because I suspect you may have been gotten in shock, because it seems that some parties were able to do whatever they want, because to place an ad, someone has to do the copy, someone has to get the quote, someone has to process the invoice. There's a whole series of steps. And this cannot happen without a series of approvals. So what is being suggested to us is that the CorpSec, perhaps, may have been the person who put this through, but she's not here to defend herself, so we don't know what conclusion to take. And it is deeply concerning to us. And I hope, under your stewardship, Mr. Vasquez, that if the board sits and agrees not to proceed with something, that no officer should have the authority or the temerity to go against the board's decisions.
Well, I thought so. I thought so. But for some reason, it still went through the system.
Amazing. Well, what we will do, the committee will request some information. You indicated that the board members had no agreement. The committee is going to request an extract of the board minutes that reflects same, because there needs to be some type of reporting to this committee to understand how this happened.
Well, that's the next thing. It's a report at this stage. The minutes for that particular meeting was not confirmed by the former chairman.
Well, you have someone, you would have had a note taker in the meeting. They would have draft minutes.
Well, the COPSEC was the one who did the...
So everything seems to revolve around the COPSEC who doesn't know how to answer a phone. Well, this is just, it just gets more and more interesting, but the committee is trying to understand the process, understand where we're going.
Of course.
The process, so that if it is that the board, as you indicated, did not agree to proceed, how could a state enterprise put a full page ad in the newspapers running the 2 days on the weekend, and the board specifically said not to proceed? So who's running the company? Who's running the company? That's that, and we are trying to understand the process and make sure that things like this do not happen in the future. That's where we're going. So we are here to help you with that. Senator Mark, forgive me for interrupting your flow, but I wanted to treat you this matter. Senator Mark.
Mr. Vasquez, does that in any way explain the decision to award hefty increases in allowances to the corporate secretary, who I understand was promoted to the post of senior legal officer? What you have just described, as opposed to, as well as the assistant general manager, who would have been given a hefty increase amounting, she got $13,000 increase, whilst the corporate secretary, whose substantive post was legal officer, became a senior legal officer and went up by some $14,400. And I think the chairman was making a point earlier that if you're going to increase the salaries or the allowances of your staff, it should be done, and we have a trade unionist next to you, it should be done across the board. There should be a proper job evaluation exercise done, or a proper exercise done for increases across the board. But in this instance, we are being told that 1 or 2 persons were identified and given special treatment. So it re-emphasizes the point that the chairman is making, that the board, it appears, was not, or some members of the board were in charge and others were just being taken along. And then you had a very powerful corporate secretary who has now conveniently resigned. That is my submission. Appears to me to have conveniently resigned. And you are now telling us that a lot of things took place, even you as a director and a member of the board, without your authority, without your knowledge, So what was really and what was going on at that board level? I mean, we need some clarification, and maybe from your good self, so that we ourselves, in generating this report, we can bring the Parliament up to speed.
Through the chair, I'm really unable to answer a question pertaining to the rationale on increases of salaries. It was before my time, so I'm unable to answer that question.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to, we understand. You are new to the board, this is new to you, but the key message that the committee is keeping driving is that you've seen what has gone wrong, we've outlined it. We would like to make sure that you as the chairman drive through the process, that these things that have happened in the past don't repeat going forward. That's a common theme that we're going with now. You have a new board, you have bright, new, perky faces ready to go, but make sure that we like alignment. This committee likes alignment. We want you aligned on the view that the bad practices that have gone on before by previous members of both the board and management we try to fix those going forward so we have a tighter, leaner, more efficient, more effective EFCL going forward. You're the guy in front, so you have to lead the charge. But if you need support from this committee, we're here to help.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask
you.
Mr. Vasquez or Mr. Cox, are you aware that there is a vacancy in the office of the procurement manager? In other words, there is a vacant post in the establishment of the EFCL titled Procurement Manager. Are you aware? And could you tell us, because of the significance and importance of this office to the tendering processes, the procurement processes of the EFCL, how soon would this be filled? And maybe as I'm on that point, may I also inquire whether there is in existence a management tenders committee at the EFCL level?
First of all, the position of procurement manager is in fact vacant, through the chair, Senator Mark. Her contract, the person holding the position contract expired at the end of May, I think. We haven't yet, occupied the position by any, in terms of recruited anyone or renew the contract of the incumbent. Secondly, in terms of the Management Tenders Committee, based on the reconfiguration of the organization structure that took place sometime last year, the names of the position in the Tenders Committee document is different from the, what does it say, the new position created is not reflected in the Tenders Committee document. So the board would have to amend the Tenders Committee document in line with the new configuration of the organization structure. For instance, CEO position is no longer there. You have a general manager. Divisional manager is no longer in the new structure. What you have is assistant general manager. So based on these changes in the organization structure, we'll have to amend the tenders document so that it reflect those changes.
Could you tell us if the procurement manager resigned or was dismissed or the contract? Could you tell us whether the position of procurement manager and that office holder, did the person resign? Was the person dismissed? Or is it a case of the contract not being renewed? And if it was not renewed, for what reason? Is there anybody who can provide us with any answers to this one? Because this is a very important office in the whole scheme of things within that very, this company called EFCL. So could you share with us what could have or may have happened?
The contract of the procurement officer expired, and management is yet to make a decision, the board that is, as to fill in that vacancy. But we see, in fact, that the role of procurement manager is critical to the mandate of EFCL, or the operations of EFCL.
Mr. Cox, could you tell this committee whether there is favoritism, nepotism, cronyism at the level of that company, where some persons, when their contracts expire, these contracts are renewed, and there are others, when their contracts expire, they are not renewed? What is the basis for some being renewed and some not being renewed? It will lead the ordinary person to believe that there's a certain kind of unevenness existing in that company, as well as it relates to decisions being taken by the management and have been approved by the board. I don't know if Mr. Vasquez or your good self could help us there.
I'll try my best to answer that question through the chair. I personally, so far, have not seen anything that you just described. It's new. It's a new environment. We are setting up our committees are set up, and we are now going to be investigating the overall performance and possibly restructure how things are done in the sense of proper reporting, proper evaluations. I know that the HR manager has some new evaluation forms that she has brought to our attention in our next board meeting. Actually, we met on Corpus Christi to start getting things organized, and surprisingly, the management tender committee issue came up at that point in time also. So we are making sure that we look at everything and review everything very effectively and efficiently in the near future. I hope that answers your question to some extent.
All right, we're close to 12:30. I know MP Karim has a question. Could you keep it to one question, please, so we could wrap up on time?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cox, are you aware of the terminology contractors of interest?
Through the chair, yes, I heard the term.
Could you define what or who is a contractor of interest?
Through the chair, I heard the term, but I cannot explain or know what the explanation is. Right?
Was it mentioned in the PwC report, of which you have a copy?
Yes, it was mentioned.
Did you see it there?
Through the chair, if you look at Appendix C in the document, there's a note there which explains that the forensic reports conducted by PwC were not included in the package because these reports are subject to legal privilege.
And finally, has any contractor been awarded a contract by EFCL who was not on your approved list?
Through the chair, I am not aware.
Thank you very much. Well, we're right on schedule. I want to start to close this proceeding today, if only not because we run out of questions, we've run out of time. Because I only scratch the surface with my questions. But we understand the executive time in this room is significant. So I would like to invite the chairman of EFCL to give us a few short, brief closing comments before we end this proceedings.
Through the chair, would you consider Mr. Pumel giving that closing remarks?
If you were willing to give it to Mr. Pumel, the committee has no objection whatsoever.
Thank you.
I just wonder why, Mr. Chairman.
Because as we discussed the last time, Mr. Pumel, you seem to be quite well brought up, and the committee appreciates that.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to make some closing comments for and on behalf of EFCL. Chairman and members of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises of Parliament, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education and her team, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Finance and her team, members of the media and members of the viewing public. I am grateful for the opportunity afforded EFCL to present ourselves to account to this august body for our management of construction and repairs of government and government-assisted schools in accordance with EFCL's stated mandate. The meeting today was indeed a learning experience for myself, and I can safely venture for the entire EFCL team because it is virtually a completely new team. Many relevant points have been made, and I am certain that as a team, EFCL will strive to make its operations more effective and efficient in delivering service in the field of education. Chairman, members of the Joint Select Committee, on behalf of the Board of Management and staff of EFCL, I thank you for having us. Also, I take this opportunity to thank our line ministry, Ministry of Education and Ministry of Finance, represented by PS Angela Sinasui-Gervais and her team, and PS Lisa Phillips and her team for their presence and continued support to EFCL. Thank you.
You're most welcome, and I want to, on behalf of the committee, to thank everyone for being here. Mr. Vasquez and your team, Madam Permanent Secretary Phillips, Madam Permanent Secretary Sinasui-Gervais, we appreciate your time taking, and here's why it's important for us to recognize this. You all are very senior civil servants. You've recognized the importance of this inquiry, and you've cleared time in your calendar to be here. And it is no small appreciation from the committee to you to be here. We recognize how busy everyone is, but this is dealing with the state resources. And while we are here to conduct an inquiry, we're here to help. The committee is here to help in any way possible to make these entities, including FCL before us, operate in a more efficient and effective manner. I want to thank the members of the viewing and listening audience and the members of the media who are sitting with us here today, and all of the support team from the Parliament. And I would now wish to advise that this meeting is now suspended. Thank you very much.
Thank you.